What is poppin', YouTube? Back again with another video. Today we're doing my top 6 must-have players for fantasy football for 2023. If this is your first time on the channel, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Best free way to support the channel. Let's go. My first player we're going to talk about today is Justin Fields. Besides my love for the Buckeyes and my love of seeing Justin Fields when he was a Buckeye, is my love for Justin Fields heading into this year for fantasy football. Now, I've seen some people say on Twitter, hey, Justin Fields, we need to lower expectations. He doesn't have the same type of elite level upside because the offense is going to be better and he's not going to be scrambling for his life. So his rushing yards are going to go down. I feel like that is the dumbest type of argument to be making about Justin Fields, because I think if we base his season last year where it was an absolute dumpster fire for the Chicago Bears offense, we can say that there's a high end upside that Justin Fields still has. And considering the fact that last year on a points per game basis, he was still QB5 with 20.5 fantasy points per game, there is every reason and every indication that we could see Justin Fields break into that top 3, to have that Jalen Hurts breakout type season this season. What did the Chicago Bears do? They addressed the offensive line as well as bring in DJ Moore, a bona fide wide receiver 1 for him to pair up with. Now, if we have seen those training videos where you have Justin Fields, DJ Moore, and then a freaking jacked up Darnell Mooney, makes you excited, as well as Cole Kmet, because Cole Kmet came on super strong at the end of last season. Now, Justin Fields, like we said, last season, 15 games, 318 passing attempts, 17 total passing touchdowns. But where he got everything, of course, was with his legs towards the end of the season. We're 178 and 147 rushing yards. Those are the type of game-breaking numbers that we need in our lineups. So go get Justin Fields today. He's my first must-have player. My second must-have player is going to be Kyle Pitts. Yes, we're ready to get burned again. And yes, we are drafting him in the 5th round of underdog leagues because Kyle Pitts still has elite level upside. And when we're talking about tight ends, it's a risque position where if you don't get Travis Kelce, you don't get Mark Andrews, you're not necessarily sure about the quality of player that you're getting. There's a whole bunch of people that love TJ Hawkinson, love George Kittle, but Kyle Pitts has elite level upside that he proved in his rookie season. Last season, he maybe had the full year and got to play with Desmond Ridder instead of just having to play with bum Marcus and Mariota. We might be talking a little bit different. Even last season, even though it was a terrible year where he only had 2 receiving touchdowns, hey, that was an improvement on his rookie season where he only had 1 receiving touchdown and he only played in 10 games. There is a montage on YouTube if you want to go watch it of all the passes that got missed to Kyle Pitts. Now, if all of a sudden some of those completions get completed and we've seen Kyle Pitts' after catch ability, there's no reason for us to say that Kyle Pitts doesn't have the tight end 1 in his range of outcomes, because he does. And especially when you're drafting him in the top 5 tight ends, that's what you're expecting for. I'm drafting him everywhere there in the 6th round of underdog drafts. I mean, I've seen him go a little bit earlier in the 5th, and even sometimes he does slip a little bit later, depending on if you're in with drafting with Kyle Pitts truthers. And I'm a Kyle Pitts truther, so I will be drafting Kyle Pitts even in my redraft league of friends. Unless we get a great value with Travis Kelce or even Mark Andrews in the 2nd, we are waiting on Kyle Pitts in the 5th round because we see the potential that Kyle Pitts does have. My third must-have player is going to be Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne has gotten a ton of bad rap because of Tank Bigsby coming into town. A lot of people are saying, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, some of these goal line work carries, Caleb, are going to be going away. But if we look at what he did last season, 12.1 fantasy points per game, put him as an RB23. The thing that I think Tank Bigsby helps with is Travis Etienne's endurance throughout the season. If we look, it's really hard for these running backs to stay fresh throughout the entire season. And especially with Jacksonville amping up their offense, amping up their wide receiver room, they're going to need Travis Etienne healthy for the long haul. And I think the thing is they're going to start utilizing him in the ways that he needs to be utilized, where it's out in space, it's in the receiving work, because even last season, he only had 35 receptions. And coming out of college, we looked at Travis Etienne as a guy that had the full workhorse capabilities to be able to be a really productive full workhorse back in the NFL. Now, he hasn't necessarily taken the receptions to the T, but we're banking on the fact that adding in Tank Bigsby, he can kind of play that James Robinson role where Travis Etienne gets 60-65% of the touches, where Tank Bigsby can get 30-35% of the touches, and it's going to be really productive for Travis Etienne. So I love Travis Etienne, and especially where he's going in underdog drafts right now. He's going off as RB13. He's going behind Breece Hall and Najee Harris. And to be honest, as much as I do like Najee Harris's workload that he's potentially going to get, I love the Jacksonville Jaguars offense so much more. So I am so on Travis Etienne on those prices. Love me some Travis Etienne. My 4th must-have player in 2023 fantasy football is going to be Dionte Johnson. I swear, I've talked about this guy every week. I literally do talk about Dionte Johnson like every week because I believe in him this much. And if I believe in him this much, you guys need to start getting on the bandwagon and believing in Dionte Johnson this much. So down in the comments, let me know. Are you believing in Dionte Johnson this much? But if we look, of course, wide receiver 1 type upside when we're looking at target share for the last few years. 2020, 144 targets. 2021, 169 targets. Last season, 147 targets. The only difference is 2020 and 2021, 14.8 fantasy points per game, 17.2 fantasy points per game. But last year, a measly 10.6 fantasy points per game. Put him as the wide receiver 39. No one loved it. It wasn't a great year, but he had 0 receiving touchdowns. And Kenny Pickett was adjusting to being an NFL starter in year 1. Now, I could say, and I've made this assumption that Kenny Pickett is going to be taking that second year leap that's going to benefit his off. Now, a lot of us in the fantasy football community, we thought, oh yeah, Zach Wilson's going to take the year 2 jump. And that definitely didn't happen. So we can't necessarily project that out. But even if we can't project an efficiency upgrade in the offense, we can't project out the fact that Dionte Johnson is an absolute target hog that demands high-level targets. And if he's getting these amount of targets, but yet he didn't score this amount of touchdowns, something's got to give here this season. And I think even if Dionte Johnson, he gets back to his average touchdowns, and let's say he gets to around 6-7 touchdowns, we're talking about a guy that's in the top 20 wide receivers on a fantasy points per game basis, and you're getting to draft him super late. We're drafting Dionte Johnson at wide receiver 31, which just feels like his floor when he has the potential to get into that top 20, top 15 wide receivers just based on his target share alone. And you can easily see and script that out. So Dionte Johnson is my 4th must-have player. My 5th must-have player everywhere is Brandin Cooks. Brandin Cooks, the most underrated wide receiver in fantasy football each and every season. Brandin Cooks gets the biggest quarterback upgrade of those last few years. Granted, he did play with Tom Brady, did play with Drew Brees, but he's been bouncing around from team to team to team. And all of a sudden this season, he's with Dak Prescott as the wide receiver 2 in the Dallas Cowboys offense. Now, a lot of people are going to say that's going to be Michael Gallup. For me, I know Brandin Cooks and the potential that he has because he puts up solid fantasy points per game each and every season. Now, last season was a down season for my man Brandin Cooks. Only 11.2 fantasy points per game. But if we look at the season before that, 14.5, 15.5, 16.2, 13.7, 16.4. Like, this guy gets in that 13 to 16 fantasy points per game. And all of a sudden, like we said, this year, he's getting into an offense that's going to be way more efficient, way more pass happy. Mike McCarthy is going to start calling the plays this season. And I just love Brandin Cooks as a complement to CeeDee Lamb, but also for Brandin Cooks' own fantasy football value. If we're looking at where he's going in underdog drafts, he's currently going off as wide receiver 43. And like we said, he has the range of top 20, top 25 wide receiver in his range of outcomes, and he's in the best situation that he's had yet. So I'm taking Brandin Cooks as a must-have wide receiver, especially late when you can get him as your wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. You're feeling absolutely great about Brandin Cooks in those spots, especially in your underdog drafts, but especially if you're playing in lineup, you're absolutely loving that in your redraft league. And my 6th and final must-have player for fantasy football for 2023 is going to be Adam Thielen. I love me some Adam Thielen because we've seen the touchdown upside on a year-to-year basis. And last season, it was a little bit of a down year for his touchdowns. He played in 17 games. He had 107 targets. He had 70 receptions. What was the major difference? Instead of like 2020 or 2021, where he had 14 and 10 touchdowns, last season he only had 6 total receiving touchdowns. Now, a lot of people are going to attribute that to age. They're going to say Adam Thielen's 32 years old. He's just gotten to that point where all these wide receivers, once they get to that old age cliff, they fall off. And I agree with that because it's getting to the point where we can see that he's not as athletic, he's not running the best type of routes just based on the fact that he's getting older. But he lands in a situation in Carolina where they are bound to have to throw the ball to somebody. Now, I know they drafted Mingo in the 2nd round. I know they brought in DJ Chark, but Adam Thielen is going to be the wide receiver 1 to Bryce Young. And let me tell you, depending on how you feel about Bryce Young, they're going to have to throw the ball to somebody because the team's not going to be good. They're going to have to be coming from behind. And when you're coming from behind, you're doing short throws, you're trying to move the ball, trying to score as many touchdowns as you can before the clock runs out. And that's going to benefit Adam Thielen. Even if he is somewhere between his 2022 season and his 2021 season, we're talking about a guy that can get to 11, 12 fantasy points per game. And that's going to put him somewhere in the range of wide receiver 20 to wide receiver 23. And if you can see Adam Thielen getting those type of numbers, that's going to be really impressive, especially when he's going off the board as wide receiver 64 currently right now on underdog drafts. Wide receiver 64. Even if he does continue this decline where he's not even performing up to par, even if we look at last season on a points per game basis, he was still wide receiver 41. So he's getting way drafted, even way below his floor. If that is his ceiling, even if wide receiver 41 is his ceiling, which I don't think it is, he's still getting drafted way below that. So you're even going to profit if you draft him at wide receiver 61 prices. Like we said, he can get back to being a top 25, even a top 30 wide receiver. You're going to look like a freaking genius drafting Adam Thielen in those later rounds of your underdog draft. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Best free way to support the channel. Appreciate you guys all for tuning in here today. We'll be back again tomorrow with another video. Catch you on the flip side. Peace.